Dear Dad, one of my earliest memories of you was when I was standing fearfully on a diving board in Denver. I was 5 years old, afraid to jump into the water. You were in that pool, arms wide, ready to catch me when I jumped. You told me it would be all right, and that I'd be safe. I never jumped. I was too scared, and I've always regretted that. But your arms have caught me countless times since then. I think back to a Sunday school class when I learned about the flaming fury of hell and how I could go there if I didn't follow a certain doctrine. I was 8 years old and scared more than I'd ever been about the thought of going to such a horrible place and being separated from you and Mom. You two promptly took me out of Sunday school. While you believed in the sense and beauty of some of the messages being taught there, you disagreed with the ones that used fear to force complicity. There was a time I learned about the Vietnam War, the draft that took so many young people away from their homes and families and ended their lives in a world far from their own for a cause far from their reasoning. Maybe I was being a coward, but at that age, probably still around 8 or maybe 9, I feared being forced to fight as well. I feared dying and not knowing why it was happening. Dying and, again, not seeing you or Mom again. I told the two of you these fears as we sat out on the deck at our house in Noblesboro. You told me that if there were a war, you would fight in my stead. That appeased some of my concerns, but nor did I want you to have to fight either. The most important part of that conversation was toward the end, when you told me something that has always stuck with me. I like you a lot. I love you a lot. My thoughts go to the infamous time at 12, when I was sledding and navigated 2 ice-covered snowbanks, thinking I could leap both in a single bound. I passed the first one, but my arm collapsed against the second, breaking my elbow. It was my own mistake, but you felt guilty about it. After the emergency room, when I lay in the stretcher, you stroked my hair lovingly. I was really touched by that. I tried to be stoic, to hold back the tears from the pain, to impress you, and I believe that you were impressed, but I never wanted to give you the impression that emotion was something I forced back behind a wall. It's always been there with me, perhaps too much so. Regrets are always something you never wanted me to have. You never want to look back and say, I wish I had, you often told me on the way back from swim practice. I don't necessarily wish I'd become an Olympic swimmer, but I do appreciate the times we spent in your truck, back and forth to practice. I got to learn more about you, and hearing the classic rock songs on the oldie station helped more than anything to foster my love of music. I think a lot of our conversations by that point have been sort of at each other. The one that strikes me as one of the first truly to each other was the one after I suffered my big middle school breakup. As I wrote in my mask story a few years later, you had asked how my day was going when I got home, and I gave my usual pat answer of good. But you sensed there was more, and my eventual tears affirmed that. The very wonderful conversation we had that afternoon, which stretched into the evening, paved the way for us outgrowing the titles of father and son and becoming great friends. You told me about your times in boot camp, your struggles in life, your vulnerabilities. I saw that sweet and soft side, that very beautiful part of you. That conversation will always be one of my favorite memories. So many happy times. I've always admired, maybe even worshipped, your sense of humor, to the point that I've tried to make it my own. It's been great when we've hit on the same lame, dry joke at the same time, to the playful groans of those around us. I've seen the effect you've had on people, the joy you bring into their lives. So many laughs. The Three Stooges. The fart in the elevator. Even though I wasn't there, the piece of gum you put on the clapper of that bell at that ceremony, pissing off the drill sergeant type guy who was leading the proceedings. The bets about Wayne's World and the Bluefish t-shirt, both of which you let me win. The time you were night watchman at the Rennie's tent sale, and I dressed up like a creepy old guy and pretended to try to break into the store, and you called the cops after repeatedly asking me to leave the premises. Thankfully, the police officer had a great sense of humor and played along, pulling me out of the back of the cruiser and asking you, "Is this the dirtbag?" as I pulled off my mask and said, "Hi, Dad." And again, thank God for your sense of humor. I've often lived vicariously through your stories. Even MacGyver would envy the way you dipped your motorcycle to the ground to slide under that freight truck that had pulled out in front of you many years ago. I was the little squeezle, as you called me, when I was a kid, who was always seeing you as the ultimate superhero. When you were installing a basketball backboard for me and lost your balance, you somehow managed to jump backward off the ladder and never let the backboard go. I was pretty impressed by that. You're the strongest, greatest man I have ever known. Although as a kid I kissed you on the cheek or forehead each night before bed, I don't remember us hugging much before the awards ceremony in high school, prior to me graduating. It was a great feeling to have my arms around you, and vice versa, and I'm glad that we've hugged many times since. Again, those arms that have caught me. There was, of course, another big breakup, this time huge, when I was a sophomore in college. It pained you so much to see me suffer, and you regretted the road trip we'd taken earlier that year for me to meet her. You wanted so much to relieve me of that youthful agony, to take it upon yourself if you could, but I had to fight it out, figure it out, for myself. I sat across the bar from you at home, having the welcome home for the weekend Michelob Light beer that had become our tradition, telling you the latest news. I tried to be tough, like when I'd broken my arm, but as it was with the previous breakup, my emotions got through and I was a mess. And again, tenderly, you walked over and put your hands on me, massaging my shoulders, consoling my pain. I felt safe, I felt loved. Those times, just the guys, were truly great. You, Mom, and myself are a trio that can't be replaced, and it was only with the coming of Lauren that someone else could join that sacred inner circle. But every dad needs time alone with his son, and vice versa. I remember us sitting on opposite sides of the couch one night when Mom was gone on a Rennie's buying trip, watching movies and listening to records. We listened to Simon & Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water. My favorite Christmas Eve may always be 2002. I was 24, you were 53, and you and Mom had recently moved into your recently built house on Lake Pimlico. It was a time to wish I often wish I could return. You'd be at work, on the late shift at Bath Ironworks, and I'd swing over for dinner. You'd come home asking how your loved ones were doing, and the three of us would shoot the shit. The evening would grow late, and Mom would either go to bed or fall asleep on the couch, and you and I would stay up talking for a few more hours. Religion, spirituality, aliens, the meaning of life, the lessons of youth, love, everything that crossed our minds we'd discuss. We were open books, aided no doubt by a few of those Michelobs, but I felt so at ease, so at peace talking to you. What a joy to talk so openly to my dad, to my great buddy. The three of us, you, Mom, and myself, had gone on several long-distance trips over the years. The final and best one was Puerto Rico. We were all adults, equals. I brought my guitar, and you and I sat out on the balcony of our room that night, drinking beers and singing, to the chagrin of the people in the room below us who vacated the premises. That's when I wrote Paradise, because here we were. Not just an awesome place, but with awesome people, in the best possible state of mind and spirit. Then there was that water slide. We might as well have both been 12. We ran up the stairs, swooped down the slide, plunged into the water, faced each other with broad smiles. Uno más, you'd ask. One more time. Uno más, I'd say. We uno más, many a más. From a balcony to a deck. We played beer die on the deck of my Damerscotta apartment against my old college buddies Scott and Ted. I often thought of you while I was in college, finally letting my hair down a little, envisioning you in your younger days, and how fun it would have been for us to hang out at the same age. But Puerto Rico showed that a number didn't always define an age. In another deck, that at mine and Lauren's house. We'd bought the house and gotten married 11 days later, and now here we were at our housewarming party. We had a good crowd, and had snuck onto the deck to grab another beer, chilled by the November air. You followed me out. There we had another great chat. A lot had happened in the past few months, and you'd watched me take huge steps in that long path of adulthood. You told me of your pride in me, your love for me, and I echoed those sentiments back to you. We looked out into my backyard, into the autumn night sky. There, for a moment, the world was perfect. About a year later was the news. The diagnosis, the prognosis. The world darkened in a way conceived only in my nightmares. I had trouble that January night holding back those emotions. I sat across from you at that old dining room table that I'd spooned my name into as a toddler, and I clasped your hand tightly. I told you how I love you. I told you how I wanted you to be able to meet your eventual grandchild. You said that gave you something to live for. You expressed surprise at my tears, saying that I'd always been so stoic, so guarded. But I've cried many times. With you, for you. Oftentimes biting my lip. This past year. More bad news seemed to come. One night you patted me on the shoulder and told me I'm a good old son. I tried not to break down right there, and I choked out, "You're a great dad." When I was a child, growing into a teenager, you espoused the virtues of common sense. I was probably found wanting of that as a kid. Adulthood has brought the lessons that have honed that sense. I still have a long way to go, but I think I'm finally starting to get it. Being a father to Walter, with a human child coming one of these days. Finally understanding that the grown-ups don't have all the answers, as you often told me. Finding that it's better to drive a little slower to avoid a speeding ticket, to choose my words a little more carefully, to think before I act. I have so much loved our talks, so late at night, so boundless in limitations. Why are we here? You'd ask me, and I'd be proud that you deem me worthy of delivering such a response to you. My conversations with you are some of the best I've ever had with anyone, and they always will be. As I mentioned, sometimes Mom would sleep on the couch during those talks, just to be close to us. The three of us have been so close. It feels at times that we are one person. I see you and Mom as two facets of myself. After all, the two of you joined to create me. It was really nice recently, right before I was about to climb into the car and head off once again, that you suggested the three of us do a group hug. And there I was, in your arms, in Mom's arms, in my arms. The two people whose love gave me life, who both have nurtured me every day since, whose guidance made me who I am today. My life in my arms. Another moment I wish I could freeze in time. I never wanted to let go. Sometimes I'm still that little boy, back on that day in Denver, standing nervously on the diving board. I didn't jump into your arms then, and I have regretted it. But that was one moment, and at so many times in my life I have tripped, faltered, reached out for someone who cared, and there your arms have been. I hold you close to me now when we part ways. I cherish each moment in your arms, saying we love each other. That pat on the back. I try to freeze the moment in my mind, preserving it for years down the road when I look back and want to remember just what it was like to feel your embrace. I am a person sometimes known for having a way with words, but it is difficult for me to express just how much I love and cherish you, Dad. Not because I feel awkward saying it, because that's far from the truth, but because the depth of my love for you is so boundless that it's not easy to define with words alone. That embrace, in your arms, is perhaps the best way to express such an eternal love. I thank you and Mom and Lorne for showing me how to love so deeply. I imagine a time when I, like you nearly 40 years ago, go through that tunnel, see the light at the end, be once more reunited with those I loved most, who have gone before me. It will be an incredible jump, much farther than that time on the diving board. But I will see you there, and this time I won't hesitate to leap into your arms. I love you, Daddy.